Well, hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Fixate and Binge Podcast. It's another glorious week on planet Earth. We're in late March now. We're almost into April, and what a week it's been. I say what a week it's been because I always think there's something interesting going on. There's something worth discussing, which is why we come back every week to this podcast. I want to start this off really quickly by telling you a couple interesting things I've been watching, I've been enjoying, and I think you might enjoy them too. If you share some of the similar tastes in small screen entertainment that I do, I think you're going to enjoy this. I like horror, of course, so I talk a lot about horror on this podcast, but I also like adult animation, and I don't mean like creepy, lurid, that kind of animation, but HBO since 2019 has been showing a short animated series, and I've really, really enjoyed it. In fact, my son and I have just been binging it. We've now binged all 3 seasons, and that's the only seasons available at the moment. But the show is called Primal, and it's an animated show about a caveman or Neanderthal living during caveman and Neanderthal times, and he befriends what looks like a T-Rex, and the two of them form an unlikely bond, and then they kind of move through time and move through challenges during the Jurassic period. The show actually moves these two intrepid characters through time and through eras, and you can see evidence of the Bronze Age and the Iron Age and some of these things, and eventually they start coming into the Dark Ages. So they're not quite time travelers, but they certainly take creative license in moving these two characters, and the Neanderthal character is aptly called Spear, and the T-Rex female dinosaur is called Fang, I think. Yeah, Fang. And there's almost no dialogue in any of the episodes, almost none, other than grunts and growls and brutal killings and things. But what kind of really hits my interest with this show is that it's just so simple and straightforward, and I really enjoy it for that. And so 2026, the 3rd season was put on HBO Max. My son and I just finished watching the last episode of season 3. They've tied it up rather nicely. I don't know if we'll get any more seasons from this. Nothing's been announced. I'm sure it just depends on ratings and demand. But the creator of these characters, the guy that directs all of this and puts all this together, his name is Genndy Tartakovsky. My son knows about him. He's well regarded. A lot of respect for this guy. The characters are just so straightforward, so simple, and very enjoyable. And the stories are interesting. And it's, I think, a testament to what you can do. You can tell a compelling story without bogging it down with large amounts of expositionary dialogue. This story is a very visual, animated story, and yet it hits a lot of right notes. It really does. I really enjoyed it for that. And that's kind of in contrast to other adult animated shows that really lean heavy on dialogue and things. And that's a completely different kettle of fish. But Primal on HBO Max, I highly recommend it if you're just in for something that is straightforward, short, not dialogue heavy. It's very enjoyable. It's very enjoyable. I just really enjoy the show. If they bring it back for more seasons, icing on the cake. If they said, no, the 3 seasons are all you're going to get, the way they ended it after season 3, I'm satisfied with that. That too would be okay. But if you're looking for something that's just, you're trying to scratch that itch of interest to find something not too complex to follow, but just visually enjoyable with good characterizations, I think Primal on HBO Max is a great, great option for you. The other thing that I'm really enjoying, and dare I say it, I'm enjoying it more than I enjoyed the first season, is the jury, the jury duty. Now, the first season of Jury Duty was an interesting concept. They literally had jurors show up for a trial in the first season. And everyone in the juror pool was an actor except one actual person who really did think he was fulfilling jury duty. And so it's just such a clever meta reality type comedy. I really enjoyed it. James Marsden plays himself in that first season. Great show. But they brought it back for a second season, and it's weird because now they've called it jury duty, even though it's not jury duty. But they need you to understand it's a different concept, but the same type of layout. This one's called Jury Duty Company Retreat. And everyone, of course, just like the first series, is an actor. Nobody is a recognizable actor. That's why it's really the only reason why this works. But one of the characters on the show, of course, is a real person. His name is Anthony. And Anthony is a temp for a locally run or a mom and pop family owned hot sauce company that are taking their entire staff out for a company retreat, for company bonding, type of seminars and things. And anything that can go wrong is going wrong. It is just so funny. I am laughing and laughing and laughing. Sometimes I'm just amazed how much they're getting away with. It is beyond funny. Every episode is a comedic gem. It's the funniest thing on TV. And until Studio Season 2 drops on Apple TV, this is the funniest thing to catch on TV right now. So if you're looking for something that's short and to the point and very funny, this is the show. Both of these seasons of Jury Duty are absolutely hilarious. It's really for people that love the kind of mockumentary format, whether it's The Office or Community or Arrested Development. This is in that style. So it's very, very enjoyable. Two great shows, I think, to put a smile on your face. One, you'll just enjoy it, of course, it's primal, and the other, you'll just be laughing. And I think laughter is what we need. The world is burning in different parts of the planet, and I think we have to look for some light. So if you're looking for light, and I frequently do, these are two great, satisfying shows that I hope you get a chance to watch and enjoy as much as I have. Now, last week's episode was about the Chuck Norris experience, the Chuck Norris experience that I personally had almost 35 years ago, acting in a film that he was in, a film that has since attained cult status. But I think that cult status was achieved mostly because Chuck Norris himself became a cult figure in pop culture. And isn't it funny that the word cult and culture are so interlinked and related to each other? But that's what happened. I think if Chuck Norris's cult status had gone the way that Steven Seagal's has, I don't think we would be talking so endearingly and warmly about the passing of Chuck Norris. And so I think that's helped. I think that's helped position his earlier work to be something of a crowd pleaser. And Sidekicks, it's really his main comedy. I think it's seen as kind of a tongue-in-cheek take on the Karate Kid mythos, as it were, with of course, self-referential nods to Chuck Norris himself, who plays himself in the film. Not quite Last Action Hero type stuff, but interesting nonetheless. Anyway, I digress. That was last week's episode. If you haven't listened to it, tune in. I spent 6 days on set with Chuck Norris, and I offer some personal experiences and some perspectives on him and the entire filming experience. So I think that's a good starting point if you want to listen to something that's a little bit more culturally relevant to what's going on now. But because of that episode, it pushed out what I wanted to talk last week into this week. And so the topic I want to discuss is the excellent, excellent film from Phil Lord and Christopher Miller, adapted for the screen by Drew Goddard from Andy Weir's novel. And I'm talking, of course, about Project Hail Mary, starring Ryan Gosling. And what I want to do is just say right off the bat, if you haven't seen the film yet, turn this off now. Don't listen any further. Press pause and come back to this podcast, because I'm going to be honest with you. I'm going to spoil the film. We're going to talk about specific plot points, characterizations. We're going to explore it. Not the deepest of dives, but we're going to talk about it. And if you haven't seen the film, don't listen further. Please, just pause, come back, and continue. And by the way, you owe it to yourself to see this film. It is fantastic. Now, I did write a Letterboxd review, and I do want to share my impression of the film. And so my kids don't like listening to me read or do spoken word. I hope you won't mind if I give you my review of the film, Project Hail Mary, and then I want to use that as kind of a launch pad into, no pun intended, Project Hail Mary, rockets into space. But I kind of want to use that as kind of a launch pad to discuss some of its wider themes in the film. So again, last chance, last warning, if you haven't seen the film, press pause now and then come back. Because everything from this point on is a spoiler for the film. Okay, you've been warned. All right. So let me share with you my review of the film. Take the intergalactic wonder of Interstellar, mix in the humor and humanity of The Martian, and you get Project Hail Mary, a genuinely thrilling, surprisingly heartfelt sci-fi film from Phil Lord and Christopher Miller, adapted by Drew Goddard from Andy Weir's novel. Ryan Gosling plays Dr. Ryland Grace, a brilliant astrophysicist turned middle school teacher after being pushed out of the scientific community. But when a mysterious phenomenon begins slowly killing our sun, threatening life back on Earth, he's pulled back in to prove the very theory that ruined his career. Alongside him is Sandra Hüller, assembling a global team racing to solve an impossible problem. Like The Martian, this is a film that makes science feel exciting, urgent, even awe-inspiring. But what really sets it apart is what happens next. As Gosling's Grace journeys deeper into space, he encounters something unexpected, an alien traveler searching for the same answers. And somehow, that relationship becomes the emotional core of the film. It's funny, moving, and surprisingly profound, touching on friendship and sacrifice and what it means to connect even across the universe. Visually, it's stunning, grounded, tactile, and refreshingly real, eschewing overuse of green screen for something that feels truly cinematic. Honestly, don't be surprised if this shows up at the Oscars. But more than anything, this is a film about connection, because at the edge of the universe, humanity just might find its most meaningful friendship. And that is my review. So I love this film. If you can't tell, I gave it 5 out of 5. I can't think of anything it really needed to do. I haven't read the book. To be honest with you, I struggle to find the time and the silence to read books because I like to have a controlled environment when I read. And I don't put headphones in and listen to music when I read. So I like it to be library quiet. And I live in a small house there's 5 of us in here with a dog that won't shut up every time he thinks somebody's outside or driving by. So it's a bit tricky. It can be a bit tricky to find silence. But needless to say, Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir, the book, is on my list, my bucket list, as it were, of books that I really want to read before I die. So that's definitely on there. And I do that purely because he's such a fantastic writer. He made The Martian, he wrote The Martian, and now he's made this. And I've really enjoyed this. But I want to get into a few things that I touched on in my review here. So if it's okay, I want to tell you that I didn't have a lot of expectations going in. I didn't really watch the trailer over and over again. I tried to go into this film as blind as I could and not really get in depth and not click on links or behind the scenes or, hey, set photos. I know that sort of thing goes on for every superhero Marvel film, I didn't do that. I went in, and moreover, when my wife and kids came with me to the movies, they hadn't watched any of the trailers for it either, as far as I know. So it was a very pure reaction with very little expectations. If there is a critique, and I don't think it really is a valid critique, but if there is a critique that some viewers may have, is that pace yourself if you buy a giant tub of popcorn and soda, because this is a 2.5 hour film. So your bladder may be full if you don't stretch it out a little bit. So just be careful with that. Of course, if you're listening to this, you've already been through the experience of watching the film. So too little, too late. Anyway, I didn't have a lot of expectations going in, okay? But what I didn't expect, the thing that surprised me the most was how emotionally resonant it was, because it really brought out emotions and feelings in me that I wasn't really expecting. There is a trope about man, space, and loneliness, and it's definitely something, of course, explored in Andy Weir's other novel that Ridley Scott directed for the screen several years ago, The Martian, starring Matt Damon, where he's stranded on the surface of Mars. And then it becomes this big, fascinating effort to try and get him back to Earth, which was considered improbable. So, when I see a film about man in the stars, man walking among the stars, man floating out into space, I mean, it does evoke that Hello Major Tom song from the 80s, 4, 3, 2, 1. I mean, it really evokes that. I mean, when you think about those themes, it really is about loneliness. It is about tackling our place in the universe. And the more we get off this blue dot, as Carl Sagan called it, and we stretch out and look out and travel into the stars, into the heavens, as it were, we begin to truly grasp how insignificant we are in the grand universal scheme of things. I mean, it's really fascinating how small we are, a speck of dust floating in the cosmos. And that's one of the things that I really enjoy. I think it's awe-inspiring, and it's certainly something that is the Andy Weir, the writer of these novels that are being turned into wonderful films. It's certainly something that he has grasped completely. You do have Ryan Gosling floating out into space for a far, far off destination outside of our galaxy, our solar system, as it were. It's way, way out. And how he gets there, that's also interesting. That's another thing that I really appreciate about Andy's films, or his books that turn into films, rather, is that he tries to keep them grounded scientifically in trying to show readers or viewers what's possible. Don't be afraid to dream. It can be explained scientifically. And that's kind of why in my review, I referenced Interstellar, right? And I also referenced The Martian, because both of those films were grounded in scientific possibility. Almost everything presented in both of those films is scientifically sound, is possible. It blows me away, right? I mean, that's interesting. And so I'm kind of glad that those are the parameters that Andy Weir's novels work within, because it gives a very realistic, grounded feel to these things. But moreover, the thing that really surprised me about this is that it actually inspires interest in science and what is possible out there. And that's something that both The Martian and Project Hail Mary completely encapsulate in a very satisfying way. These are the type of films that they should be showing in classrooms. And I don't mean high school classrooms. I think they should be showing these films in middle school. And you might need a parent's signature to get approval to see it, but I'm assuming The Martian is PG-13. But you should be showing these films in schools to increase interest in science and biology and all these things. They all kind of connect. And that's what I really enjoyed about this film. I think if I'd grown up and seen these films growing up as a youngster, I think I might have taken my science classes in college a little bit more seriously. Unfortunately, I lacked the imagination to see what was completely possible. But anyway, Ryan Gosling's performance here really is something else. Some are calling it his best performance yet. I don't know if that's necessarily true. He was great in La La Land. He's been fantastic in multiple things I've seen. I count myself as a Ryan Gosling fan, but this is a singular performance. It's very isolated, and he doesn't have a lot of people to play off of. There are flashback scenes, of course, with Sandra Hüller's character, the scientist back on Earth, but in terms of what happens in the spacecraft, it's very isolated. I do know that sometimes Ryan Gosling's children, his daughters, would speak into an earpiece for the Rocky scenes. When Rocky was having dialogue with Ryan Gosling's character, the dialogue was read in Ryan Gosling's earpiece by his daughters. Of course, I think the narration or the voiceover work for Rocky, the alien puppet, as it were, and by the way, it's not CGI, it's a real puppet. That was all done in ADR. That was all done after they finished filming. But I think that informs Ryan's performance. It really gave something resonant, personable, and meaningful. And so it's really weird. This film cast a special kind of charm on its viewers. It certainly did for me. I mean, I want you to think for a second. I've got a 22-year-old son, a 17-year-old daughter, an 11-year-old daughter, and my wife and I. And now it is almost impossible for all five of us to sit down anywhere and decide what we all want to watch and all agree. And I'm not saying they all agreed they wanted to see Project Hail Mary. Most didn't even know what it was, okay? But for this film to be loved and to satisfy and to be so enjoyable to every one of us, I mean, you have to go almost to a Pixar movie to really to really identify a similar experience where I'm like, we watched it and all of us loved it. We all took away something we loved about that film, and that was certainly the case I referenced it in the film. I referenced it in my review. That was certainly the case watching E.T., Close Encounters of the Third Kind. I screened that for my family, and my wife and I showed our kids E.T., and they were crying, and it was just such an amazing experience. But Project Hail Mary, one of my daughters said she was crying at certain parts in Project Hail Mary. And even I got a little misty-eyed for a rock alien. Now, that was the biggest surprise. So this is a family-friendly film. It's PG-13, so take it easy. You'll be fine. But I encourage everyone to see it. If you're listening to this, you've already seen it. I assume you've seen it. And I'm sure it's doing a lot of great business around the world because of its positive word of mouth, which it more than deserves. But Ryan Gosling's performance was just perfect for this. Absolutely perfect. He did so well. He's isolated. He's hurtling through space. He's trying to keep his wits about him. And he seems, for the moment, the hero we need, the hero that Earth needs back home. And what was interesting is that through a series of flashbacks, we end up discovering he was a very reluctant hero, extremely reluctant. And that brings up a very interesting idea here. How do we balance that? How do we take somebody that's reluctant to be the hero, a very reluctant hero? This is a little bit like Jonah and the whale, if you think about it. Another great story about being isolated in the great unknown. And I maybe I'm pulling at straws here, but Jonah did not want to go to Nineveh. He did not want to do what, the God of the Old Testament told him he needed to do. I need you to go to Nineveh, dude. I need you to go save these people. Much the same way Sandra Hüller's character says, I need you to go and get on this ship and go to this distant sun, this distant star, and find out how we can fix our star in our solar system. And Gosling's character did not want to do it. And then he was forced to do it. And Jonah's character did not want to go to Nineveh. I'm not trying to turn this into Veggie Tales or Bible story time. If you've listened to me long enough, I'm not one of those Bible types. But one of those Bible thumping holy rollers. Repent, repent, hallelujah. Can I get an amen? I'm not one of those. But I am saying, I went to Sunday school. I know these stories, but it's very similar to the Jonah story. He was reluctant to do what he was told to do, what he was told only he could do. And in the end, he was thrown overboard, into the sea, into the verge, into the mouth of a big fish, or what we consider today a whale. Whether you believe that happened or not, doesn't matter. But it's a very similar setup to what happens in Project Hail Mary with Ryan Gosling's character. He had everything we needed for him to be the man of the hour, right? Cometh the hour, cometh the man. But he didn't want to go. He was reluctant, he tried not to go. And in the end, he went without his consent. And he could have just thrown in the towel. Can you imagine waking up in the circumstances he did at the beginning of that film? Waking up and discovering he's the only surviving member on that crew? How, and you're millions, if not billions of miles from home. You've been traveling for years in cryo. You know, a lot of people would just say, I can't fix it. It's not mine to fix. I'm never going to see anybody back home. I'm just going to drift and go back to sleep. Close my eyes and never awake. You know, there's something rather heroic about the reluctant hero, as it were. And of course, we know the story of Jonah. Eventually, the whale spits him back up. He goes to Nineveh, and the rest is history, or biblical history, if you will. And so I really related to that because it's very hard, I think, to relate to heroes. It's very hard to be given an opportunity to be heroic. You know, not every one of us can run into a building and pull kids and kittens out of a burning house. It happens, but not all of us are going to be thrust in those circumstances. Not all of us are going to have greatness thrust upon us quite like this. Now I'm turning it into a Shakespearean Malvolio speech from Twelfth Night. Some are born great, some achieve greatness, and some have greatness thrust upon them. And this is a case of Ryan Gosling's character having greatness thrust upon him, and he didn't want it. He didn't want the burden of it. It's too heavy. It's too great. You know, a little bit like somebody in the Garden of Gethsemane. See, I'm turning this into a Sunday school meeting, and I don't mean to. I'm sorry. But the burden is too great. But he did it anyway. And I think those are the most relatable heroes, are the ones that they don't think of themselves as heroic. They just think of themselves as maybe the only person in that moment to do what is necessary for everyone else. I am reminded of the Fukushima nuclear meltdown we had many years ago in Japan after that terrible earthquake. And Fukushima, you know, nuclear reactor in Japan was, well, it wasn't quite like Chernobyl, but it was certainly cancerous and deadly. And these nuclear cores were heating and they needed water to flush them. And that nuclear reactor in Fukushima needed attention. It needed work. We couldn't just walk away. I mean, it was going to be an imminent threat to anyone around it. And it's going to irradiate the area, and it could get into the seawater and, you know, cause all kinds of problems. And what was interesting, and I'm paraphrasing here because there's some wonderful stories about this. This says quite a lot about the Japanese people. But when they were looking for volunteers to go into the reactor, by the way, you were going to be exposed to radiation. Your safety could not be guaranteed, but they needed people to go into that reactor and help clean it up. And the people that volunteered were older men. Older men, and the reason the older men came forward was they said, we've lived long lives, and it doesn't seem right for younger people, husbands and fathers, people with young children. It doesn't feel right that their lives are cut short making a sacrifice for the rest of us. I mean, that's mind-blowing. You do not see that often in society. You don't see it in this society, not in ours. And few other countries can actually show that, you know, they can, but that's amazing, isn't it? You know, sometimes the hero is the right person in the right moment to do the right thing. And that's what Ryan Gosling's character does. Now, the character of Rocky is just so interesting. It's just so creative. It doesn't have a face. It doesn't have an eye. It doesn't have ears. It's just a voice. And the translation method, I thought, the translation scenes themselves, how Gosling's character learned to interact with this intrepid alien rock creature from another planet, another system, was one of the great charms of the film, because it was just interesting, and how they started communicating and interacting, and then the friendship and the bond that forms between them is the real charm of this film. I mean, it was the last time I felt there was genuine human, it feels weird to say human, a human bond, because it's the only bond I can think of, because I happen to be a human and it's the only one I can relate to. The last time I saw something like that in a film was E.T. So I referenced Close Encounters of the Third Kind because it's hinted at, of course, at the end. But the bond that Elliot develops with E.T., with the extraterrestrial, very, very similar to the bond that Gosling's character has with Rocky, the aptly named Rocky in this film. And what's more impressive to me than anything is the fact that the alien creature has no actual humanoid features whatsoever. There are no raised eyebrows. There are no smirks or anything. It's just this rock. It's this rock with appendages, and it's highly intelligent and highly skilled. And the big surprise was it was funny. The alien creature had kind of a built-in sense of humor. And, it seems almost reductive to say that's a very human thing to have. It's like, well, that's kind of reductive. How do we know that we've cornered the market on humor or love? Because there was love too. And that was what I really enjoyed about this film, is that love seems to be a universal trait in the universe. And love doesn't come from lightning striking a pond or mud with cells in it, or it doesn't come from that. So where does love come from? And it's just fascinating. Do we evolve to feel love? No, I think it just comes. It's a gift given to you, and it may be hard to identify it in other species, but you can see evidence of it. A killer whale can lose its calf, and then it'll mourn for its calf and carry the lifeless body of its calf on it. It'll carry it around the ocean for weeks and weeks and weeks and protect it from being eaten by predators. But it's fascinating. There is love throughout life. And where there is life, there is likely love somewhere. You'll find it if you look hard enough for it. And that's exactly what happens in Project Hail Mary. I think audiences are responding to this story in the film as well as it has because of that. Because it has emotion, it has humor, and it has intelligence. It taps into something that is cosmically universal, and that is the need for connection. Isolation has its own place, but being lonely, being alone all the time, we're not meant to be alone forever. We're not. And so when we can connect with something else, when we find that special person, whether it's a partner or a spouse or a longtime girlfriend or boyfriend or whatever it may be, or it could just be you and your dog, having your dog jump up on your lap when you come home from work, because they're always happy to see you. Those connections, they span eras, they span time, and it's just wonderful. It's just wonderful to make a connection with something living and loving. Really what makes this film an all-time sci-fi classic is all of the elements I've talked about: its intelligence, its humor, and the fact that it was very scientifically possible. Everything seemed scientifically plausible, the way that it was put forward and explained. And that really should give the rest of us some hope. Reach for the stars, dream big dreams, stare into the night sky and say, it's not a matter of if, it's when mankind can take these great leaps into the great beyond and do wonderful things out there. And of course, the other end of that is, if we have the ability and we have the means to do all these wonderful things in the universe, what's stopping us from doing that in our own little universes back here on home? on earth, as it were. What's stopping us from doing a kind deed for somebody else? What's stopping us from helping others? And many of you do. And I think that's so fantastic. Before we introduce the universe to humanity, we need a little bit more humanity back here on earth. We should be able to demonstrate actual community, actual love. We should drive out prejudice, bigotry, religious bigotry. We should take all those things and throw them out. Those are the things, of course, that separate us. They don't unite us. It separates us, creates barriers and walls and hostility and distrust and suspicion. Those things are corrosive to any community coming together. And, if you need another example, the Fukushima is a wonderful example of people just coming together and putting aside their personal needs or differences and doing what was right, doing for the greater good. And I really hope that as we invest in the stars and looking and exploring, and I hope that we don't lose sight of our capacity to do all those wonderful things right here on Earth, to make Earth a better place for everyone, a more welcoming and inviting and inclusive place for everyone. And I say that because my country's at war with a country in the Middle East that posed no direct threat to us here on American soil. It just didn't. I don't understand it. It's baffling to me. But here we are fighting over resources in the 21st century. We must have the resources that Iran has. That's why we're doing this. Or we're doing it for religious or cultural differences. It's just stupid. We're so destructive here. And so it was just really refreshing to be taken out of that headspace. I have limited bandwidth to put up with this stuff. I'm sure you do too. I have a limited bandwidth to just turn on the news and just see horrible, terrible news. Nothing's working. Oil is at $113 a barrel. It's been holding at over $100 for 2 weeks now. I get angry when I go to Costco to get the cheapest gas I can get access to, and I still spent over $70 filling up my tiny 4-door Chevy Cruze. That's ridiculous. I get frustrated at the cost of things, but it's one of those things. Sometimes it's nice to take a brief break from that. And this film, Project Hail Mary, was just like a big warm hug. It was a big warm hug for my soul. Put its arms around me and it held me and it said, "It's okay. It's okay. This is a 2.5-hour film. I want you to sit down. I want you to enjoy this. Take yourself completely out of that headspace of everything that's going wrong in the world and just enjoy this film." And maybe that's the real magic of movies, because when they're done this well and they're done right, that's the magic of movies. I hope movies can continue to strike awe and give us surprises like this. I wish they all were like that. Some are, but many aren't. So you owe it to yourself. If you watched Project Hail Mary and you enjoyed that film, you really need to recommend it to as many people as possible. So I don't have much more to add to it than that. I didn't read the book. I think I've established that. So I can't get into very specific minutia and things mentioned or things that were not in the film that were in the book, that type of discussion. I just want you to know that great films like this, they don't come around all the time. They don't. They don't even come around every year. But this one did, and I'm really glad it did. I wanted to see it on the big screen one more time before it disappears, because this is a big screen experience, and it has to be seen on the big screen. If you see it on the small screen, it's okay if you choose to see it on the small screen. But if you can see it on the big screen, see it on the big screen. It's that good. So good. Anyway, I'm too positive about this film, so I'm just going to close this podcast. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening. Again, to recap, 2 great shows that you can catch are, the Jury Duty Company Retreat. I think by Thursday next week, the rest of the episodes will drop. And Primal, all 3 seasons are available to check out right now on HBO Max. I don't think you'll be disappointed. And I hope you're looking after yourself. I hope you're staying healthy and happy. I hope that your headspace is in a positive place, and I hope you're looking after your mental health in good ways too. I leave that with you. I'll see you next week. By the way, I've got exciting things coming for the month of April, which is a good month. I think it's the best month. It's the month where I have a birthday. So I'm looking forward to what April is going to bring us. I'm going to have some guests on. Count on it. I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.